Hello, welcome to SRB2. I will be showing you a general explanation on how the game works to try and help you with your speedrun of this game. More or less, how this game works is you control the player, and you can collect rings. It's just basically like Sonic. So if you get hurt, you lose your rings. If you don't have rings when you get hurt, you die. So you want to collect rings to make sure you have at least one ring, and checkpoints let you respawn where you die. And you got 3 characters to pick them: Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. So basically how the game works is you got to use your abilities, the rings, whatever, get to the end of the map, and basically that's what you got to do. It's fairly simple. So as for controls, you want to generally want to start with setting your controls more or less and picking something that's very comfortable to you. So there are 3 sets of control methods. You can use your keyboard, which is basically turning with the keyboard. You can walk around with the keyboard, jump with the keyboard. It's very rigid, but also very slow at turning. So if you prefer rigidity over the ability to instantly turn around, you can do that, but I recommend against it, because I don't know any runner that actually uses this. And you also have mouse controls, which is basically using the mouse to look around and turn, and you use basically the keyboard to sort of control your character around the world. There's your ability. You can jump, you can spin, you can roll, spin dash, basically all your generic Sonic stuff. You got a jump button, spin button, so you're basically going to be heading into the movement controls, because that's basically the bulk of what you want to find. You got forward, you got reverse, you got turn left and right for keyboard turning. You got jumping, you got spin dash, spin button, you got strafe left and right, which is also fairly useful. And you also have the analog control, which if you turn on, you can use your joypad to sort of control the game. Sort of like the Sonic Adventure series in a way. Also, the camera is very lazy. If you go backwards, it's sort of not going to go with you, unless you sort of like circle around like this. If there is a control method I'd recommend you using mouse and keyboard. Oh yeah, to turn it off, you sort of have to go to options and turn off analog control. So if you want to use the mouse and keyboard, you want to use mouse to on, and always mouse look to on. And you can also control the sensitivity in both horizontal and vertical, so that's very useful to you. So yeah, make sure to set up your controls before you play, because this game in general is fairly hard to control. If there's any big bottleneck in this game, it's probably the controls, so get that sorted out as soon as you can. As for the levels, it's pretty self-explanatory. You have a green flower zone, which is basically a green level. It's basically your tutorial zone. It's got like water for you to sort of splash in and see its physics. And at the end there's a boss. And then you have Techno Hill Zone 1, which has goo that lets you levitate in it. Basically, it's sort of like makes your character buoyant in it, so you float up from it. It's also got spring bots, which lets you bounce off of them. They're fairly useful to us as well. And you have basically each second act is longer than the first, so just keep that in mind. It's basically act 1 is basically a taste of what the level is like, and act 2 is like a full out of that whole level design. Then you got the boss at the end. It's simple. You got Deep Sea Zone, which is basically a water level. got a lot of water, and you have to avoid drowning. And then you have Castle Eggman Zone, which is basically more or less some sort of platforming focused zone with, like, you know, Bannocs and stuff thrown in. It's more or less focused around the platforming elements. And of course it's got a boss at the end. And then you have Arid Canyon Zone, which is and you also have Red Volcano Zone. Both of these levels are one level zones. They're not finished. That's why they're both just Zone 1. So, like, this game is still unfinished and as it is. So, Arid Canyon Zone is basically a large vertical themed canyon level. Red Volcano Zone is, in contrast, is a very horizontal tunnel visioned level where you just run through a volcano. Egg Zone is basically the space level. It's basically, it throws everything all together. It throws drowning sections. It throws gravity. It's basically where the game just throws all the gimmicks at you. And Egg Zone 2, which is the longest level in the game. If you're going to be spending there for at least 3-4 minutes, don't be alarmed if you even spend even more time, because it is a very long level, and it's also very difficult, and you're very prone to dying. And don't worry about dying throughout the campaign in your run, because it'll probably happen. It'll happen to a lot of newer runners too. It's normal. Don't worry about it. We all have to die to it too, because, well, it's actually very difficult, even for people like me. I've spent like 10 years in the game so far, so, like, this game is very old, so you're gonna see a lot of people who are very old to the game, and also a lot of new players to the game, which is probably you. Then you have Egg Zone 3, which is somewhat special. You have to race Metal Sonic through the level, as well as beat him up at the end of the level too. And then you have something special, which is basically the final level, which is more or less your final egg sort of thing. So, final level. So you just basically fight Eggman to the death in an arena built by him, and you fight his robot. So that's basically all the levels. And your goal is basically to get through these levels as quickly as possible, while trying to avoid as much platforming as possible, because having to do platforming is basically making you do something that you don't want to do, which is basically playing the level. So you're more or less trying to skip through the level as quickly as possible, find every optimization possible. So the thing is, this game has very few in terms of more or less, it has very few glitches. So basically your main goal is to sort of go through in the most optimal path possible. So basically the best way to sort of like understand that is to sort of look up other people's runs and see where they go, and look up, you know, the records website for SRB2.org, and like download some of those replays and see where they go, more or less. So let's go and get started on the whole core of the strats for the characters. So basically, you can bounce on a Bannoc or a monitor, and basically you keep your vertical height while doing so. And this is useful to sort of like skip to other places in the level. And you also bounce up a little bit from doing so as well. So as you can see, there's a ledge up there that you can't get up to. But because bouncing on Bannocs makes you slowly accelerate upwards, you can basically keep bouncing on Bannocs. Eventually, I can reach up here, because bouncing on Bannocs makes me go up slowly every time. So just keep that in mind, that's very useful for you to get up to places. Like, let's say there's this ledge here. If I bounced maybe like one more badnik on there, I probably would have made up that ledge. It's useful in some very rare cases where a ledge is just not high enough for you to get up to, so more or less bouncing. Also, momentum retention is very useful in this game because, as you can see, I can jump, sort of retain my momentum from this little ability that I have. In addition to that, bouncing is a good way to retain vertical momentum as well, and sort of transfer it into vertical momentum itself, or just retain your height in general. So basically you want to retain your momentum because you don't want to be crashing into walls and stuff like that, because that just immediately slows you down. Another good thing is something you can do called a momentum cancel. Of course, you can cancel horizontally with Sonic by doing this, for example. Like, you know, but you can also cancel momentum vertically too. If you jump, like in most Sonic games, if you like jump for a short time, you make a small jump. If you jump for a long time, you get a big jump. And here's the thing: if you let go of the jump button while jumping, it basically cuts your momentum in half. That's how the game handles you jumping up low or jumping up high, and you can sort of use that to abuse the game mechanic and sort of cancel much larger momentum. So I'm gonna hold my jump key, and I did not let go of the jump key through that whole jump. So basically, what I did was I bounced on that badnik, and now my very fast downwards momentum is now a very fast upwards momentum, but I still haven't let go of the jump key. So if I let go of the jump key now, it cuts that vertical momentum in half. So you get what's called a wimpy bounce, or we just call it a wimpy. This also works if you happen to be going down while letting go of the jump button. Oops, my bad. Wait. It also works if you let go of the jump key while going down, because when you're doing that, the game wants to cut your momentum in half, but it also has another condition of when you're going up. So as a result, as soon as I bounce on the badnik, my momentum becomes very high vertically, and it immediately cuts in half. That's a wimpy bounce. So yeah, we can vertically cancel our momentum. It's useful in very rare conditions. So you can basically use it to sort of, you know, get yourself onto a ledge sooner, more or less. It's useful for characters like Sonic, because that basically lets him immediately get to the ground and start using this ability, which makes him go pretty fast. So Sonic and Co have various power-ups that they can use to their advantage. One is the Super Sneakers, which basically doubles their walking speed, and then the doubled walking speed is faster than his ability he's using right now. So that's why I'm basically not, you know, using it now. There's also invincibility, which basically is the sparkles, or, you know, it's in almost every Sonic game, but basically it makes you invincible for a short time. You can literally just plow into badniks and just destroy them. The only thing they don't make you invincibility from is just basically from death bits, but you probably know that from Sonic games. So that's basically the power-ups. We have a couple shields as well. Some of the most useful ones are this shield, which basically attracts rings to you. It's useful in record attacking, or trying to get like record attack emblems. Another good one is probably the most useful shield, which is the whirlwind shield, which just gives you a double jump, more or less. And then we have, oh right, I can go and find it. I can go and find that shield that I need. Okay. I need to reset the level. There's one here. So right here is basically, I'm gonna go and hit a checkpoint so I can checkpoint where it back here. So in here is an elemental shield. It protects you from painful water. It protects you from lava. and also lets you not drown, and also lets you spread a file trail when you roll along the ground. So it's basically your immunity shield, more or less. Also, something that I forgot to explain is the attraction shield protects you from electricity damage, whereas this one doesn't, so yeah. Another cool shield, I'll go ahead and get to it. It's somewhere up in this map. It takes a little bit of bouncing for Sonic to get to, but I'll show it off here. Basically, I'm going to bounce up here. There's a little secret up here. You'll see a shield here called the Armageddon Shield. It basically looks like a radioactive symbol, more like a nuke, sort of. It's being nicknamed the nuke by the community, but basically when you set it off, it explodes all the badniks in the nearest vicinity. Also, Sonic can go super. Sorry. Anyway. It also activates if you touch a badnik. So basically, if you get hurt, or if you jump and press the spin, you activate the shield. So yeah. And there's one more shield. It's in this map, I think. It's over here. This map basically shows off all the shields to you. This is the blue shield, as people call it, and it's basically a force shield, and it basically lets you endure 2 hits instead of 1. So if you get hurt, you still have the shield. It's sort of transparent. You get hit again, and it's gone. So it's basically protection from 2 hits. So it's essentially useless in a speedrun, more or less. So that deals with the shields. So I'm going to show you off something called a hyperwall. It's basically a wall of glitchy physics. If you hit a wall just right, you can get some mad acceleration from these walls, because it's more or less they have some glitchy collision where they try to compensate for friction for you, but they don't do it properly. So when you are off the ground, it basically lets you hyper accelerate. There's a good example of this right over here. I'm about to show you. So basically, how hyperwalls work is you're supposed to accelerate yourself in a cardinal direction. If you see a lot of like right angles in this game, it's because they're often aligned with the cardinal direction. Because this game is basically Doom. It's basically a modification of Doom Legacy. So more or less everything that is Doom already exists in this game. So if you see these right angles here, they're basically cardinal directions. So this is a cardinal direction. You'll see that my angle is like approaching 0. My angle is around 60,000. Now it's around approaching the negative and positive 32,000. It's negative 16,000 here. So yeah, basically cardinal directions: north, east, southwest, whatever. So if you approach a glitchy wall like this in a cardinal direction and just rub against it like that, you get accelerated very, very quickly. This is used very seldomly, but it's also very useful because it means you don't have to do something like a spin dash, or you don't have to like walk around it. And in some cases it's faster to do that. So if I just do something like this. So if I do something like this, basically. Skin Sonic. So if I just do like this is monumentally faster than just using his like ability that I just had. So there are a couple of uses for this. They're on a case-by-case basis. But basically, there's some people in the community who just run around trying to hunt for these walls. So if you want to like join the fun, go ahead. Sometimes you get like yourself stuck in something. Oh, okay. Whoa, okay. That's cool. That's a bouncy corner, by the way. They're very, very, very rare. Anyway. More or less, moral of the story. Some walls are buggy. You just basically have to experiment which walls are buggy and which are not. And more or less, just experiment to see which walls let you sort of hyper-accelerate along them. And perfectly diagonal walls, like in this map right here, are always hyper walls in both directions. So I can go along that way, and I can go along this way. Perfectly diagonal walls, as you can tell, are always hyper walls. Another thing that I forgot to show you, that's not currently in the list that's over there, is something called a bonus jump. If you, with gas jets, fans, and whirlwind shield boosting, you'll notice that as soon as I reach this ledge, I clip up that ledge. I'm on the ledge. If I jump during this frame, I'm able to jump normally. And I'm able to actually get a jump dash off it. So this is a frame perfect trick. So if you like jump is on the same frame that you clip up, you can get something called a bonus jump. It's a frame perfect trick. If you want, you can match for it. That's fine. I prefer to get the timing of it though, because it's good practice to get the timing of it, so you can get a lot of time like that. That's called a bonus jump. Basically, it's faster than just like, you know, doing that and just waiting until you hit the ground. So it's basically good practice if you want to do something that saves like a second or two. Also gives you more control of your character. There are very, very rare instances where you can use a spring to get a bonus jump. I think the only case of it is in a mod called Mystic Realm in its Prismatic Angel Zone, where you clip up an intangible floor, where you clip up like a one-way platform with a spring. That's the only way I've seen that actually work. Anyway, that should explain, like, that should basically explain hyperwalls in a nutshell, as well as that glitch I just mentioned. So Sonic has a speed thock, which is this jump dash. As you notice, he jumps and he dashes, jumps and he dashes. Basically, to activate it, you just jump and then jump again. It's sort of like Sonic Adventure series. Even makes the same sound too. Basically, his jump dashes at a speed of 60, so it's useful for getting to places because basically he can use that to sort of transfer a lot of momentum, or change his momentum instantly for various reasons. Just keep in mind you can only use it once per jump. You can't use it again after using it, so it's basically a speed thock. His bouncing is very useful because bouncing is very useful to Sonic because he's a very horizontal player. So if I want to get up to there, I can go across here and sort of just platform my way up this area here. Or if I felt like it, I could hit one of these badniks and spring on it and just use the jump momentum, the thock momentum to just sort of get up there instead. It's also useful in a bunch of various other cases too. Like this level, Skin Sonic. So if you go up here, you can bounce on the bandit here and sort of skip all the way over here. Bandics will always work for this. However, monitors will not always work for this because if you go down at them at like really fast speeds, sometimes you might glitch inside the monitors and then you just don't even get your bounce. And you get sort of stopped dead in your tracks, so It's really, really horrible, and you don't want that to happen. So, yeah. Bouncing is very useful for Sonic because it lets him skip things. I'll show you another example right here. This is something that Tails and Knuckles and Sonic use, is that there's a monitor in here, in the water. Now here's the thing, when you go out of water, your speed vertically doubles. So you can basically use that monitor. So you see that hole up there? We like this hole because it's basically the exit of this room. But we don't want to take the platforming, so we just bounce on the monitor up here. It turns out there's just enough momentum to jump from there up to there. And you can just continue with your way. More or less. Yeah. Oh well. So, now I'm going to show you the Whirlwind Shield, which is very useful for Sonic as well. The Whirlwind Shield is especially useful for Sonic since he can just... Since, as you saw earlier, it's basically a second jump, so... Normally he'd have to go around, but he can use this Whirlwind Shield to sort of like go up here. Like, he can't get up here normally, but he uses the Whirlwind Shield, he can get up here, so... It just basically lets you take a shortcut path, which more or less lets you just go through here. It lets you complete the level in a very reasonable time. His Whirlwind Shield is also useful for retaining momentum, as I'm about to show you. So I'm going really fast off of a hyper wall, but I can retain that momentum through the Whirlwind Shield. Or if I want to spin dash. Like that, so more or less. His Whirlwind is very powerful. So you're going to see a lot of Whirlwind in this run. So here's a good example of both those thrown together. Both Whirlwind and Bouncing thrown together is this map. Because basically, this is basically the culmination of Sonic right here. It's basically, I just use this jump thock to sort of like skip across. And with that, you can get to this area very, very quickly. And here's basically everything combined together. Jump dash, bounce. I'll try it again. So basically, jump dash retains momentum. Bounce on the box. Bounce on the box. Whirlwind Shield. Jump, Whirlwind Shield. Jump thock. Boom. Lots of platforming and skip with Sonic, so there you go. So basically, he revolves around using stuff to help him out, more or less. So we're gonna move on to Tails now. Basically, he has this flight mechanic which lets him fly, as you may have noticed. He can fly with pressing the jump button a second time while jumping. So, jumping a second time while jumping initiates his fly, and whenever he presses the fly button again, he loses 4 speed and then flies up a bit. And the thing is, he's getting relative momentum rather than universal momentum. So if he's going down and you press the fly, he's hitting the ground because his upwards thrust just isn't enough to match what gravity has already done. So that's basically his flight in his nutshell. His normal flight speed, like his flight speed cap is not, like, speed caps are not really caps. It's more or less, if you go too fast for whatever limit it's at, it just basically lets you slow down to that limit, but not immediately cap it. So if I'm flying, I can fly at up to speed, like, if I walk, I'm going at a speed of 32. About 32. His flying though, his flying speed is at 16, which is half of his walking speed. So if I start to fly, you'll notice that his speed is going down, up until 16, at which point I'll just keep going up to 16 if I hit fly again, because that's basically his normal speed. So when he runs out of fly, he goes back to his normal speed, so that's useful in very few scenarios, but not often very useful, because you'll want to use his other thing called a spin fly. So basically, the spin fly is his main means of getting around horizontally. When you spin dash, and then jump, and then fly, you basically keep that spinning momentum that you just started with spin dash. That's more or less a spin fly. Now, like I said earlier, if he loses 4 speed while flying, while pressing, which means if you press the spin, the jump button, he loses 4 speed every time he just uses jump button while flying. So if you're just using his spin dash to sort of fly, don't spam the jump button, because it'll just make him just slow down a whole lot, and you don't want that. So more or less, you want to keep his momentum by pressing the jump button while flying as seldomly as possible. And you want to control his momentum by basically guiding him around. If you go too quickly, if you turn too quickly, he sort of just does a 180, and then he just... If you turn too quickly, he starts losing speed. If you turn too slowly, he just doesn't guide himself at all. And you don't want either of those. So you want to control him at a nice pace, or else you'll start losing speed either way. So this is basically how spin fly works. You can also jump, or frame perfect jump to keep your speed. So yeah, more or less, that's just how spin fly works. That's how you keep your momentum. You can also retain vertical momentum as well. So earlier on, when we bounced on the band to sort of keep our vertical height, or keep our vertical momentum intact, we can do that because when he flies, he sort of drops down slower, because his gravity is less when he's flying. So as you can tell, there's a clear difference. Now, if you bounce on a bannock and then fly right after that, you can abuse the fact that he has less gravity while during fly mode, and you can just do this, and basically make your vertical momentum go up further than you normally would. So that's basically his mean ways of going up in this game. And basically you can use this to combine other things in the game, like speed shoes, and the result is this, more or less. Combine that with his shoes, and immediately you can use his speed shoes to sort of run around, etc. Another thing you may want to consider is it takes 2.17 seconds to charge the spin dash completely. And you're going to have to debate whether you want to spin dash or whether you want to run, because if I go to the beginning of the map, if I want to run up to this crawler, it takes about 2 seconds. If I want to charge max spin dash, it takes 2 seconds. By that time I would have already met the crawler. So you want to use only spin dash that would optimally give you the most speed for the least amount of charge time. And it's sort of a gray line-ish sort of thing, because it's hard to do the math for it. But more or less, if we want to charge a full spin dash... What? Hello? Why are you looking up? Game! Oh, okay. There's the controller. That's just my joypad being dumb. Anyway. You want to make sure that you save those 2 seconds through your spin dash, spin flight. So more or less it's risk and reward. So if I'm going to walk to that waterfall, it'll take about 7 seconds to get there. Oh, that's nice. If I charge a little spin dash, I can sort of accelerate myself. And it takes a little bit less than 7 seconds, which is a little bit nicer, but we can do better. like charge spin dash for like a second and a half. I get there in about 6 seconds, and that's nicer. Let's charge a full spin dash. Let's charge a full spin dash. And we can get there in about 5 seconds because spin dashing outweighed the time lost from charging the spin dash. Like so. So we just found a little golden ratio where we got there in under 5 seconds. It was a little bit less than a max charge spin dash, so it's more or less experimentation to find out what kind of spin dash works. The example is right here. We want to charge for about a second and then hit that spring. Because it's faster to just do this than doing this. Because you're basically going faster than your walk speed at that point. More or less. So yeah, that's basically momentum retention for Tails. And now we're going to go over to Knuckles. And we're just going to go back so it can just be Knuckles instead. And we're going to go ahead and show you. So basically, he can glide. His gliding is a lot slower. It's sort of like Tails' fly speed. His gliding is a lot slower than his movement, so you want to avoid having to use glide whenever possible. Because gliding is slower than his walking. So if anything, you only want to use glide when you need to. Because his gliding is pretty slow. But it's also very useful as well. You can also climb on walls. So climbing walls is one of his main ways of going up vertically. But he can also let go of a wall and then glide to sort of quickly clip up on the surface instead of just doing this. It's useful in some cases, but it's a general time save, so you might as well just do it always. It's basically Knuckles' multi-purpose trick. It's one of his only multi-purpose tricks. Like, a lot of stuff that we do for Knuckles is sort of getting around his gimpedness, because Knuckles is a fairly slow character. So what I'm doing there is something similar to what I did with Tails, is when he's gliding, his gravity is also low as well while going up. Like, his gravity is slow while doing that too, so. If I bounce on the Badnik and then glide. Let's go up here. So if I bounce on the Badnik and then glide, I'll be getting more height than where I put what I put into it. So that's more or less climbing. You want to also understand that it takes time to climb up a wall. So if you're trying to like go up like a large wall, let's say we want to go up this wall, this one right here. It takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds to get up. But if we want to, we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can do that as well. Now here's the thing. Let's say we want to climb this wall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 whole seconds to get up on top of this wall, which is a fairly long time. Now what we can also do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We just saved 4 seconds because we just used Knuckles' bounce to just go up even quicker than we normally would. Because we transferred his vertical momentum upwards. So basically you sort of have to more or less weigh out whether it's faster just bounce up or just climb up, more or less. And now we're going to get on to his Knuckles paths, which are also fairly annoying. So if you ever play this map, you're basically going to, you're basically trying to get to the end of the map. No, he doesn't have a lot of horizontal movement, but we'll solve that a little bit later. So you're gonna go through this map. This will be the second zone, so it's fairly early in the game, but you're gonna notice that you can't get up here. And you can't get up here as Knuckles. Because instead, they've decided they'd be nice enough to give you a Knuckles path. Sort of like in Sonic and Knuckles, so you're gonna end up going through this path instead, which is an area of the map designed around Knuckles' ability, usually. So there's some climbing segments, there's rings against the wall, and there's areas for Knuckles to sort of use the wall and sort of just dive in there, climb. You know, you get the deal. Just go in there and just sort of dive down. And there's hidden secrets for him too. So more or less, our main goal is to avoid a Knuckles path if possible, unless it's faster, because quite often Knuckles paths are a lot slower than taking the normal path. So if we can, we'll try and avoid it. There are very few instances of this. One instance of this is in a hidden map called Aerial Garden Zone. It's a secret unlockable, because you can actually use one of the bandits to sort of get around the Knuckles path in there. It's a little bit faster than going through normally. So yeah, you're gonna have to deal with Knuckles paths, and they're kind of annoying. And you got one last thing to talk about for Knuckles, which is the spin dash jump. So this is his main way of getting around horizontally, sadly. Is sort of jump around and just use the jump to sort of just retain his momentum, like I mentioned earlier. You can use jumping to retain momentum, like I showed you earlier. You can also use this goo. That's possible too. Though I don't know any instance where it's useful to do that yet. Anyway, regardless, basically he has a couple uses for this, and here's some shining examples, like right here. This map is a really good example of it. Jump, 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 jump. Another thing you want to do is you want to avoid pressing jump before you hit the ground, because then you just grind along the ground and then you just lose a bunch of speed. In fact, you just stop dead in your tracks, and you don't want that. So it's good to be late than to be early. It's better to be late than to be early, so just keep that in mind. Also, super sneakers are a fairly good way for Knuckles to sort of like move around. Once again, spin dash jumping is another way for Knuckles to move around. And here's the prime example. This is where spin dash jumping was invented. For this. Jump, 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 jump. More or less a series of spin dash jumps. So yeah, spin dash jumping is hard. It's frame perfect to get it properly. Frame perfect lets you retain all momentum. If you're a little bit late, you'll lose a little bit of momentum, but more or less you generally want to be as close to it as possible. And finally, we'll talk about the bosses, which are fairly easy to talk about. So, oops. Basically, the first boss is the Eggmobile. He basically tries to shoot a laser at you if you just let him do his thing. And if you hit him, he just dashes away from you. Which fortunately lets you combo him like this. And his pinch face, I'll just show his pinch face real quick. His pinch face He sprouts some spike balls and he dashes at you. It's sort of like a kamikaze sort of attack. Of course, it's kind of dumb because, you know, we can jump at him. Sometimes he will glitch and become invincible for way too long. That is literally the meme of that boss. That boss is a meme. If that happens to you, just accept it. It'll happen. Next we have the Techno Hill Zone boss, which is more or less the Egg Slimer. He just wanders around just throwing slime everywhere. Same deal, same deal. You just time it, and you just keep comboing him to the side. And when he's here, you just combo him against the wall. It's fine. It's okay if you get hit. There are ways to sort of like get around getting hit and just sort of early cycle him. But in general, if you're starting out, just combo him against the wall. It doesn't matter if you get hurt. And then we have the Deep Sea Zone boss, which is an RNG boss. Basically, he has a 1 in 5 chance to go through each tube. If he goes through the middle tube, he goes up much faster. So you want to hope that he goes up the middle tube because the middle tube is much faster than these outer tubes. If we actually get a middle tube, that is, we'll see how it looks. Let's see if we can get a middle tube, just to see what it looks like. This will definitely take a while because I just feel like my luck is bad with this. There's a middle tube, so he immediately goes up the middle tube, and then he moves a lot faster. So basically he moves a lot faster going up a middle tube. So you want as many middle tubes as possible. That boss is completely RNG. Of course, as you can tell, he can go through several times through the middle tube. So yeah, basically ILs for this are basically a grind for the middle tube. It's kind of dumb, but whatever. But that's kind of fine though, because we actually have segmented segmented runs as well, and those make use of those IL records because we have replay demos. So more or less, RNG boss sucks. The end. And then we have no boss for Arid Canyon Zone, Red Volcano Zone, but for Castlevania Zone we do. It's called the Excalibur. Basically, in a nutshell, he just spins these spike balls around you, and he goes on time cycles. So it's basically a boss where you have to wait it out, more or less. Each cycle goes down by half a second each time, so that last one was 4.5 seconds, this will be 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and up he is. So basically his first 5 hits are 4.5, then 4, then 3.5, then 3, and then 2.5. Each of these first 4 hits, it doesn't matter what you hit him at, because he has already predetermined cycles, so the first 4 hits don't matter. It's only the 5th hit which brings him to the pinch phase, because you want to get into the pinch phase as soon as possible. So this is going to be 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. So this last hit, you want to get him to his pinch phase as soon as possible. One, 2.5, boom, his pinch phase. So there you go. His pinch phase, he just circles around these spike balls again, and he gives you an extra change, sort of just jump up at him like this. You want to try and get a one cycle off of this, like this. That's your main goal as Sonic and Knuckles. Tails can do something even more funky, but you'll have to find that later. I'm pretty sure you'll find that out. Basically, he can sort of align himself up somewhere and sort of just fly up at the boss and hit him with his tails instead. It's really nice. Then finally you have the Metal Sonic boss, which is basically the end of Egg Rock Zone 3. So basically, Basically, this boss, you're basically racing Metal Sonic to the end of the map. And he breaks through spikes along the way. Basically, your goal is just race him to the end of the level. Of course, being Sonic & Co., he doesn't have an ability. He only knows how to just go through the level as soon as it can. So basically, you're just going to use your abilities to sort of find ways around him, more or less. And at the end of the map, he's got a Metal Sonic fight, which I'm about to show you. So basically you want to just get through the map as soon as possible. It's more or less just playing through a level. Like, it expects you to get through the level and beat him in a race when you're already just trying to speedrun, so obviously you're going to end up just making it anyway. It's not really that hard. He's really slow, honestly. Like, even if you mess up a whole lot and don't die, you're still going to make it. So here we're at the end. We just basically you have to touch him and make him sort of drive away, do a hyperdrive away. And then after he uses hyperdrive, he's vulnerable and you can hit him. In some rare cases, you can do this 5 times to him, but in most cases, you'll get 4 if you're quick. So after his 5th hit, he'll go into his pinch phase, which instead of sort of hyperdriving at you, he'll appear broken, and he'll sort of just uses all his energy to sort of dash at you instead. He'll do this 4 times for the first two hits, for the first two rounds, and when he's done, and for the first 2 dashes, he'll just for the first 4 dashes, he'll dash 4 times around the arena. So there's 1. So every dash he'll sort of target you, so you'll want to jump over him. And generally you want him going in the diagonal direction because it lets you set up this quick hit, right, like this. And it also takes the least amount of time for him to just go diagonally. So you just want to guide him to go diagonally around the arena, so you could just like jump over him every time he's trying to dash. Just like this. On his final hit, he'll go around 8 times, so this is 5. That's 6. 7. And this is the reason why we do this. Is so we can set up a quick hit, a quick kill on him like that. That's basically that boss in a nutshell. Every character does that, it's fine. And then we have the Igrock Zone Core, which is basically the final boss. So basically the whole point of this map is to defeat him, you have to guide him into this lava plume. It'll pick 1 of 3 randomly, which makes this another RNG boss. His movement is also semi-random. Whether he follows your directions or not is also random, so let's keep that in mind. Also, which attacks he picks is random as well. So he's basically RNG the boss. The final boss is RNG. So don't be afraid if you lose or gain time here because it'll happen. So generally as Tails, what you want to do is you want to avoid his attacks and just jump at him. And you can't hit him while he's got his electric shield, and you can hear it too, it sort of zaps and stuff. He's got this attack which is called, which basically like a instant, it's basically a hit scan. He's got a hit scan weapon. He also sometimes throws bombs out. Like, if you just let him just do his thing, he'll sort of attack all on his own. Like, he'll just use this. To avoid his attack, you gotta go behind the barrels that spout around. Like this. So I'm just let him just show off his attacks real quick. So there's like the lava showing up again. Sometimes he'll spout a bomb out of his belly. I don't know why he's not doing it. He usually does it pretty often whenever I'm doing a run. See, there's his bomb. Sometimes he spouts out a bomb out of his belly. You can also interrupt his attack by hitting him too. You can interrupt his basically his hit scan attack by just hitting him as well, and making him do a different attack instead. So more or less, that's in general a guide to Sonic Robo Blast 2. I hope you enjoy the game because it's a really fun speed game to me, and it's just full of action, and it's always thinking of what you need to do next. So there's almost no downtime in the run. So it's basically a fun speed game. It's not like an annoying one. It's not like one where you always rely on RNG. It's not really one where you have to rely on always frame perfect things. It's more or less a fun one where it's more or less based on your thought process and skill rather than trying to do a glitch all the time or trying to perfect some sort of frame perfect bug in the game that does weird things. But yeah, in general this game is very glitch free, so most of your time saves and time losses are going to be through optimization and pathing. So be sure to look up, like, you know, some of the runs that other players have done, and you can look up the records website in SRB2.org as well. So that's another good place to find some level runs as well. So yeah, feel free to just ask the community and just check out some runs, see what they do, because the best way to learn is just from watching in this game. It's hard to like explain some of the tricks in themselves. It's more or less a good game to sort of like watch and then do. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed yourself, and good luck on your runs whenever you decide to do it. Have fun.